the Jewish community were in Babel for 2,600 years. We are stakeholders. We loved our country. And in Prophet Yirmiyah, when the Jews were taken captives into Babel, they started weeping. And they wrote the famous words, "By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and we wept for Zion." When I was born, most of the Jewish community were displaced and sent packing without anything, just the clothes they are on. This community, which is now we see the topic of my talk in the conference, is after Saturday, Sunday. So in 1963, I was 8 years old, and we were asked to queue and bring back our Iraqi identity to the Ministry of Interior. And we sat in a queue, and each one gave his identity card, and instead they took our identity card and gave us a yellow card instead, just like the Nazis did in Germany. And so from 1963 onwards, we had a yellow card instead of an ID. And for the first time from the beginning, we felt we were no longer citizens. We are now something else. We could not, though, leave the country. We were not allowed, even though they didn't want us to be there. We still didn't want to. We were like hostages. In 1968, Saddam Hussein came to power. And life became intolerable. In January 27th, 1969, we were kids, me and my younger sisters, and we heard from the radio that there was a holiday, a national holiday, and no schools, no work, and everybody should just tune to the radio at 9 o'clock to listen to the happy news as to why we have a holiday. And we were playing and we were dancing and we were so happy not to have to go to school. And at 9 o'clock, the news came out that the reason for the holiday is that the great Iraqi intelligence service has caught a spy ring, and that the people in that spy ring have confessed their guilt. They were tried, they were sentenced, they were executed, all in the same breath. And on that day, on that dark black day, their bodies were hanging in the main square of Baghdad, Saht al-Tahrir. And out of 14 names that were then read, 9 of them were Jewish. And people, families, heard the names of their loved ones from the announcer. They had no idea. They didn't have the chance to say goodbye to them. And so, for us, life and death became the same. This was just one of many of these hangings and tortures and being caught in the street. And so my father decided that the only way for us is to escape. And so my father realized that the only way to escape was through the Kurdish enclave in the north. So what we had to do was to travel with our yellow cards, but now we can't do that because we will be immediately spotted. We will have forged papers, forged names, and we will travel to the north, hoping to get there on time, and for the Kurdish people to help us escape and start a new life. The escape story is long, it's not for tonight. Suffice to say, we were given a playing card, cut in half. Half of it was with us, the other half was with the Kurdish people. So that when we finally make it, they can match 1 plus 1 and know that we are the real thing. My father was only told 1 step at a time, so that if we get caught and tortured, we never reveal the route. I was 16, my sisters were 14 and 11. One of the instructions is we never open our mouths because we have speak a Judeo-language that would give the game away. So we should not speak. I don't know whether it's an anecdote or laughing, but we were sitting in the train because somebody, as we stood in the station, somebody said, you know what, the weather in Mosul is so good, you should try Mosul. And that was the cue to go to Mosul. The next carriage, we saw another Jewish family. But we pretended we've never seen them or we don't know anything about it. And about midnight, the doors of the carriage were knocked. And army people came with a loudmouth inspector. And all we saw from the next door carriage was the guys were throwing their food from the window. Insane. Weeks later, when we finally made it and we escaped, we asked them, why the hell did you throw your food away? Why would one throw chicken through the windows of the train? And said these were no ordinary chicken. These chickens were stuffed with our jewelry. But when we heard the knock of the army, we thought they caught us and we had to dispose of it. So we had to throw it from the window. My story jumps to the final stage, the crossing over. The crossing over, we were given a car, a pickup car, 22 people sat there, one on top of the other, with a driver, and the instructions were to cross the mountains of Sinjar to Khana in Iran without any lights. The lights were to be off. Total, absolute darkness. And because if you switch on the light, the Iraqi army would shoot. And we're looking at the valley down. And that was hell. 2.5 hours of hell. Sandwiched one on top of the other. Suddenly the car stopped and the driver screamed for us to get out because he had to come back before the sunrise. And as we were begging him to say, where are we? It was total darkness. We were on a hill. It was cold. There was no one in sight. And we were begging him and he said, don't worry. Somebody will pick you up. I have to go back. And he caught me. He held my hand. Just me. Looked at me. He was a few years older than me. Looked at me straight in the eye and said, my name is Masoud Barazani.
Wow.
I am the son of Mullah Mustafa. I want you to promise me that every time you tell the story of the escape, you tell what the Kurdish people did for you. And you tell that we've never accepted a penny, we've never accepted anything, not even this. We do this because we love the Jewish people and we love humanity. And I kept my word. And every time I tell the story, and I want to tell you this is not a unique story. 1,900 Jews were saved that way. 1,900 Jews in 3 years were saved this way by the same people. 33 years later, I am in Iraq with a congressman. I'm escorting him and I'm translating for him in a fact-finding mission. We went to Baghdad, we went to Najaf, we went to everywhere. And one day he told me, Edwin, tonight we have a very special place to sleep in. Tonight we will be staying at the house of President Masoud Barazani. By now, as most of you know, Masoud Barazani became the president of Kurdistan, and until now, he's still the president. And I told him, Congressman, this is my story. And it touched him. So the next day, we were sitting, me and the congressman, and President Barazani with his foreign minister, just the four of us. And the congressman would speak in English, I would translate into Arabic, the foreign minister would translate from Arabic to Kurdish. After 1 hour, President Barazani stood up and he said, okay, I have to go this minute, I'm late for my meeting, for my Politburo meeting, and I have to go right now. And as I was leaving, the congressman stopped him and he said, Mr. President, give me 1 more minute. And the president looked at him and like, I've just given you an hour. And he said to him, you have met this man before, and I want him to say to you in 1 minute how and when. And they looked at me totally blank, and I had a minute to tell my story. And I said, my name is Edwin Shuker. I'm one of the last Jews of Iraq. And in 1971, life resembled death. And the only way, and the only people who would hear our cry and save us were the Kurdish people. By then, President Barzani realized what was coming, and I could see him holding on to a table just to steady himself. The translator, the foreign minister, had no idea. And he was rushing me to finish the story so that they can go. And I said, and the driver dropped us in this place, and we were all hesitating and begging him. And he was just translating it like this. And I said, and he stopped me and held my hand and told me, and I stopped there. And then I said, my name is Masoud Barzani. When I said that, the translator had no idea it was coming. He sat on the floor and started sobbing like a child. And when he started sobbing, and I carried on and I said, Mr. President, on behalf of 1,900 Jews, I'm here 33 years later to show you our gratitude. And at that time, tears were, like now, on my cheek. And the tears were also on the cheek of the congressman and that of the president. And for 1 whole minute, none of us said a word. We just looked at the tears of each other and realized that humanity does not recognize creed, sex, gender, or religion. Shabbat Shalom.